17 years, you've gone from out in the field agent. Now you are the director of this $8 billion organization. Was that your plan all along?
No, honestly, I've had a great career. I've had the opportunity to do pretty much every job within ICE. It's been an amazing career. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd even rise to the field office director in Boston. That was to me the pinnacle of my career, to leave Boston, leave my home, go out, have a great law enforcement career, a great military career, and to come home and finish as the head of the Boston field office was for me a dream. And then to be tapped for a position like this, it's almost surreal when I kind of sit back and think about it. And coming back here, this is my first trip back to Boston as the acting ICE director. It's really surreal to think how it's all kind of come full circle.
How did it come about? Did you get a few phone calls during the time that names were being thrown around for confirmation?
And that's kind of funny. I was one of the senior field office directors, one of the most experienced leaders in the field when it came to ICE. So I always knew my time to go to headquarters would be coming up, and I was on a temporary assignment as the acting director for domestic operations. I was in charge of all the field offices, and I happened to be at my son's football game, and my phone starts blowing up about a Fox News story that says I was one of the contenders to be the ICE director, and I didn't even know about it. So it was shocking and kind of an honor at the same time, just to be even named with some of those names. Eventually, someone else was selected, a good friend of mine. I'm very proud that he was the acting director while he was. And I was still in D.C. at the time, helping him as a senior advisor for operations, helping with the transition, working on some of the new operations that were coming out with this administration. And then, as luck would have it, had the honor of being called by Secretary Noem and asking if I'd be interested in serving as the acting ICE director. And since then, it's been a dream come true for me, really.
7-day-a-week job, lots of responsibility, and you're under the microscope now. Is that something, doesn't seem like something you shy away from?
No, and I think one of the things really that I didn't fully embrace when I raised my hand and said, yeah, I'd love to help the administration where I can, help Secretary Noem wherever I could, was the fact that ICE in the immigration policy right now is at the forefront of President Trump administration. Some of his key promises he made during the election, and we are leading that effort. And I didn't realize, I think, how big of a scope this was going to be at the time. To be the ICE director here, have 202 employees, 6 states, that was really big. But to now go more than 30,000 employees, all 50 states, postings all over the world, dealing with other, international law enforcement partners. It's just amazing what ICE and the men and women of ICE do globally to help make the world a safer place. I think, to me, that still kind of blows my hair back, if you will, the fact that some of the decisions I make, some of the conversations I have, some of the meetings I'm involved in, that, to have such an impact, not only in this administration, but for the safety of the United States, it's a true honor for me. But to your point, I didn't, walking into this, I didn't know it was going to be this big.
And global politics as well. When we first met you 2 years ago during the Biden administration, we spent time with agents in the field, and the priority was the worst of the worst. And we saw that firsthand. Is that still the priority?
100%. President made a promise to the American people that he was going to make America safe again. And I think with the ICE enforcement actions you're seeing, that's what we're doing. But also, right now, the president's goal was to go ahead and enforce all immigration law. And that's what ICE is doing, both ERO and HSI. All the portfolios are back open. We're focusing on those who are exploiting labor law violations, human traffickers. Obviously, you've seen the uptick in the student visa revocations. Really, we're looking at the whole scope of what we can do with all the ICE missions. But the ICE mission still is the worst of the worst. And I think that's what I'm passionate about, especially to come back here this week in Massachusetts, is the fact that, and you got to see it firsthand, the amount of criminal aliens that are here in Massachusetts. It's to me very mind-blowing to the fact that ICE Boston is doing great work. ERO Boston, you see all this, big news headlines about these bad aliens they're arresting. HSI New England, has large cases all over New England, whether it be counterproliferation, child exploitation, human trafficking, and yet there's still such a large presence here. We had that operation in March. The ICE team did a great job here, almost 400 criminal aliens arrested. Yet, while they were out here going after these targets, at the same time, there were more criminal aliens being released from jurisdictions in Massachusetts while they were out hunting these other targets. So we decided that we need to put more focus on Massachusetts. I think for me personally, being from the area, being from Boston, growing up in South Boston, seeing the effects of what ICE Boston did here and the results we had. I had a cousin that died from a fentanyl overdose. Boston Police Department's own Boston Regional Intelligence Center said that, more than half the fentanyl distribution in Massachusetts is from foreign nationals. That was my passion when I was here. The fentanyl epidemic throughout Massachusetts, it's overwhelming. So for me, I wanted to have that impact to go ahead and arrest these foreign-born drug dealers that are affecting all of our neighborhoods. Now to have that opportunity nationally and globally, it's an amazing feat that ICE is doing to curb the fentanyl distribution that's coming here. But at the same time, it's disheartening, because even after we do a large operation in Massachusetts, it just shows that we need to focus more resources here, because people are still getting released. There's still child rapists still out there. There's still foreign nationals committing crimes that ICE needs to use their law enforcement resources here in Massachusetts to make a difference.
Does ICE have the resources now to target people who are in the country unlawfully, who are not wanted for crimes here in the United States or back home?
Right now, under this administration, we have a whole of government approach. Department of Justice has been amazing partners. Secretary Noem has been great as far as getting us the resources we need. We now have the ability to surge more resources into an area. This week I was up meeting with some of the other partners. We have a great partner in the U.S. Attorney here in Massachusetts. I had a great meeting with her today about some big cases, some long-term impacts we want to make here in the state. So I think having those partners, having the other DOJ components and law enforcement agencies, and those agency heads willing to come to the table and say, hey, how many agents, how many analysts do you need? We want to help you with this mission. It's truly amazing to have that opportunity now. When before, ICE used to have to go out almost hat in hand and beg for help, where now it's available to us and we can actually do the operations that we need to do to make sure we take these public safety threats off the street.
Do you see more activity in Massachusetts with you at the helm?
I think one thing, having the knowledge of the inner workings of Massachusetts and New England, then getting to become the director of the agency, I realize now what I can do to ensure that I can get the men and women of ICE Boston and HSI New England the help that they need. I definitely see an uptick in a lot of the criminal aliens that we're now focusing on more. But again, now to have Massachusetts was my main focus of attention for the longest time. Now to have almost every state in a footprint in almost every continent, it's amazing that in this first 100 days of this administration, we've done some great and amazing work, but there's still more to do. There's still more criminal aliens out there. There's over 12 million gotaways that we still have to account for. And the more we're finding is that there are a lot in Massachusetts that have never been encountered by ICE or any type of DHS entity because they came here for a lot of the public benefits that were made available to them. And unfortunately, they've been exploiting not only the Massachusetts taxpayer, but just Massachusetts community as a whole by committing crimes. So I think at my level, I want to take every opportunity I can to bring those resources to bear in Massachusetts to make sure that no one else is going to be harmed by another, criminal alien here in the Commonwealth.
How much of U.S. immigration policy is coming directly from President Trump?
I think the White House has a large piece in this. I mean, that was President Trump's agenda. This is something he was focused on. Not only immigration, interior, but the border security. Border's been the most secure it's ever been since the 1960s. Border encounters are down. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the Border Patrol have done an amazing job. Their leadership has really secured the border. Now they're focusing on the northern border. Under the leadership of Secretary Noem, it's great to have a leader, a cabinet member that understands the mission, that completely has the backs of the men and women who do the mission, that she'll give us every resource, that she lobbies for us all the time. whether it be at the White House or for Congress, that we get the funds, we get the resources. So it's definitely a different environment now. The men and women of ICE feel supported. They feel like they do have a mission. They feel like they're doing the job that they signed up for. You know, they were motivated, Ted, when you rode with us last time, right? Because the people in Massachusetts got to see exactly what ICE was doing. Having that ability to pull the curtain back and let the, you know, people and the residents of Massachusetts see exactly what ICE does on a daily basis, and the violent criminal aliens they are encountering is great. But I think now people understand and see that we're actually out making a difference, right? That there is that narrative, whether you're in the left or the right, immigration is always going to be a political hot topic, but really ICE is a premier law enforcement agency. That's what I'm doing at the helm to make sure the men and women of both HSI and ERO, along with our attorneys, with our legal advisors, have a voice, that to get the resources they need, and that people realize that ICE is a vital part and a viable law enforcement partner in New England and all over the United States.
If someone entered the United States unlawfully or they overstayed a visa, are they now an ICE priority?
If you have a final order, if a judge has offered you, ordered you deported, then yeah, you are an immigration violator and you're a priority. But in places like Massachusetts, where we don't have a lot of resources to bear, and you have a fentanyl dealer or a child sex offender that's being released, we're going to focus on those. We're going to focus on the worst of the worst. Now, if you choose to be with other people that are in the country legally, and we go and arrest you at a residence, and you're there illegally, and you've been ordered lawfully by a judge to leave the United States, well, you're going to go with us. We're going to affect those orders. We're no longer going to turn away from any immigration violator. Immigration Nationality Act, it's a federal law, federal regulation, and we're going to enforce it. That's what President Trump promised during his campaign, and he's fulfilling that. He's ensuring that if you break the law, which immigration law is a federal law, could be a felony or misdemeanor, you're going to be arrested for it.
Do you think you've been shaped by the fact that you're from Massachusetts, a state that is so blue in your thinking and your understanding of at least how the mindset can be in different parts of the country?
I think so. I think coming from Massachusetts and then coming back here to actually work at a leadership level, having that, I guess, political knowledge as well as law enforcement knowledge, I understand the challenges that elected officials have, that local law enforcement leadership has, and the fact that, you know, there are ways to work with ICE and to still ensure there's public safety. And we did great work with local partners in Massachusetts. Is there more to be done? 100%. Sanctuary laws don't make anyone safer. It only protects the criminal aliens. I think having worked in an environment like Massachusetts, it's definitely learned how to navigate some of those political pitfalls across the country. One thing I've learned at every office in ICE, whether it's here in Massachusetts or Seattle, Washington, the landscape of immigration enforcement and how it's viewed politically and by its citizens is totally different wherever you go. I think leading the ICE field office here in Boston definitely gave me a positive experience on how to navigate those and how to ensure that the men and women of ICE are properly represented and that we can do our law enforcement mission still.
You may be able to educate me on this. Massachusetts has a law, correct, that sort of prevents or tells law enforcement not to cooperate. Is that a law you'll find anywhere else in the country?
There are various laws all over the country that hinder immigration support, immigration enforcement. The Lund decision is one that, doesn't allow local jurisdictions to work with us to hold criminal aliens on our behalf, but it doesn't stop a local jurisdiction, local law enforcement from working with ICE. It doesn't stop about notifying us. And that's all we ask as law enforcement partners. Totally understand and respect Massachusetts Supreme Court. Totally respect state law. But work with us, notify us, help you get these criminal aliens out of your community. You see many elected officials run on the fentanyl epidemic. When data in Massachusetts shows that foreign nationals lead some of the cases in fentanyl and heroin distribution, why not work with ICE? Why not let us help you get those threats that are affecting our kids and our neighborhoods in Massachusetts? I think that's one of the disheartening things is when there are laws like this. This doesn't say you can't work with ICE, right? And I really wish more agencies would at least just notify us and work with us, and we just find a way to work together around the law.
And real world examples of that had become a public safety issue because someone didn't want to work with you.
We've had multiple cases in Massachusetts, and the acting field office director here, Patricia Hyde, she highlights it all the time. If you go to youre Boston on X, you'll see the cases where child sex offender doesn't get held. Court doesn't honor the detainer, gets released. And what happens? We find out 2 or 3 months later down on the Cape, that person reoffends and rapes another child. You see those cases and you say to yourself, this is a prime example of why you should work with ICE. Yet a political agenda, some type of mindset is forcing you not to take a public safety threat out of your community. And I think one good thing that ICE Boston does is highlights the work they're doing. I totally fully admit that there are going to be people that disagree with the mission of ICE. I totally understand that. But I think on the whole, when people see the criminal aliens that we arrest, you can't argue why we want to remove that sex offender, why we want to take that human trafficker out. Why are we going to shut down this business that's exploiting child labor or exploiting those who came to the country for a better life, but you're taking advantage of them? And I think that's what the people should really focus on, is the good work that ICE does and not get lost in the rhetoric, because the rhetoric only takes away from a law enforcement mission.
One of the things that people have discussed a lot is that viral video of the window getting broken in New Bedford. We saw a clip that's maybe 20 seconds. What led up to that?
One thing I think, Ted, that people get lost in the fact is that if you're a U.S. citizen, and you can go to X, Facebook, Instagram, and see videos of U.S. citizens that refuse to show local law enforcement their license, won't get out of the car. And what happens? That local law enforcement officer tries to de-escalate the situation, but at the end, if he can't, that window's getting broken, that person's getting arrested. That's what happened here in this case. You only get to see that one dramatic part of the video, but when you give someone enough opportunity to give their ID or step out of the car after a lawful command and you don't do it, that's a crime. That is one thing I think people need to realize, that an ICE officer is a federal law enforcement officer. That was one of the great conversations we had with the U.S. Attorney's Office today, is the fact that ICE, whether it be youre or HSI, is out enforcing federal law. And if you don't comply, you're going to get arrested, right? You might get tased. You might get handcuffed. If you run, you might get chased. It's just like a regular law enforcement operation. They thought it was that individual, but when they got that person, it wasn't. But at that point, that person was still in the country legally anyways. But, one big point on that is, if you already have that opportunity to stand in front of that car, for officer safety reasons, I don't want my officer standing there. That person could have a gun. That person could be calling someone else to come and attack officers. It's an officer safety issue. And I think that's what really gets lost on that.
And does it bother you that it gets so polarized and that people will take something like that and that becomes sort of the image they want to attach to ICE when there's so much of this other work that's going on?
I take that really personal. I take it personal because I know that officer personally. He's a friend. He's a great human being. But then that's where comes the rhetoric in social media. He gets painted as a racist. There are wanted posters up now about him. And that's just a law enforcement officer doing their job. If someone has a problem with the mission that ICE does, I represent the agency. Take your frustration out of me. Don't take it out on the men and women that are out there just doing their job every day. Because at the end of the day, whatever they need to do to get home safely, that's what I want them to do. That officer acted in the way he was trained correctly. The whole team was safe. Even the person in the car, while they were arrested, they were still safe. And that's what really bothers me, is the fact that right now, the men and women of ICE are painted with one brush. And I just really wish people would realize that the men and women of ICE are just law enforcement officers that are out there keeping our community safe.
Something you recently spoke about, efficiency, and even the possibility of outsourcing. How do you see that? How do you see using AI? And is that trying to modernize the agency? Is that, what was the mindset? And why did you say, hey, this is something that I think we need to look at?
I did say that I believe that ICE should be run like a corporation, which it should. you know, the federal government, you've seen through DOJ and some other initiatives that we can find ways to make things better. One problem is our detention situation. ICE doesn't hold people for punitive reasons. It's not punishment. We just hold to detain them, to remove them from the country. So we hold for removal. I don't want to keep somebody in custody longer than they need to be. We need to be better about removing those individuals who have been lawfully ordered out of the country in a safe, efficient manner. A comment I made at the Border Expo did go viral when I said we need to be better like a corporation where, like a FedEx or an Amazon. The key part that got left out of that statement was I said they deal with boxes, we deal with human beings, which is totally different. And my point was going down there that we deal with humans. We have to be mindful, respectful. ICE detention standards are some of the highest in the industry. So we can't trade innovation and efficiency for how we treat the people in our custody. Could we do things better? Could we save money? Could we ensure that our detention time's shorter? 100%. Could we find better ways to transport people out of the country? When it comes to efficiency, can we find better ways to process cases, to speed up someone's process? Is there a way that we can actually process visas for people quicker? Is there a way we can help people get their citizenship quicker? AI, modernization, private organizations, they can do that for ICE. There's no reason we should just be this bureaucratic agency stuck in the dark ages the way we used to do things back in the day. That's one comment that always drove me nuts, is that's how we always did it. We can always do things better.
The judge that held an ICE agent in contempt in Suffolk County, did that personally bother you that a judge would do that?
Yeah, it did. That really personally bothered me because, again, those officers are only doing their job. Do they hold agents from the FBI in contempt? Do they hold ATF agents that show up to arrest someone on a warrant? No, it was politically driven. And again, politically driven, and now you're putting the names of two of my officers out there that now are all over social media, who get threats, who, you know, have disparaging comments made about them and the job they're doing. I take it personally anytime one of my agents or officers are attacked personally. And that's what that was, because if you attack a law enforcement officer doing their job, and when I say attack, I don't mean physically attack, but just attack the job that they're doing, or try to use that for a political gain, or to make a statement, that's just wrong. And that just shouldn't happen.
In October, ICE arrested a convicted child rapist from Brazil. He had come to Massachusetts to escape a 9-year prison sentence. We found out that he had a driver's license and was living in his wife's state-licensed home daycare. Is that, I guess, an example of Massachusetts needing to do a better job in understanding the threats that could be coming into the state?
Definitely. I think that just shows that even though the state will say consistently that they vet people, that they look at people's background, I think sometimes because of some of the political views, they'll turn a blind eye to a public safety threat like that just because it doesn't go along with the current narrative. And I think that's one of the frustrations that led to this administration going into office and being elected, is the fact that I think people are just tired of criminal aliens being ignored or not taken as a public safety threat because it doesn't fit a political agenda. Those cases right there is a prime example of that. That's a failure at the state level, whether it be vetting from that state-run agency over the wife's business, or, you know, the fact that someone's in the state that was hiding from a prison sentence for a heinous crime, who commits other crimes while they're here to get benefits, a license, etc. I think that what's frustrating for me is when the state doesn't see that as a draw. When you can come here as a criminal alien from another country that's escaping a foreign Interpol warrant for your arrest, and come here and have the state give you shelter, a driver's license, medical benefits, all type of other resources that are available, you're going to have more criminal aliens come, because they know when they see that local law enforcement isn't going to work with ICE, that you can get arrested tonight, be out tomorrow, and ICE is never going to know you're here. And that's the frustrating thing is you would hope that a state government would protect all of its citizens, right? Think about those children that are there. Their parents are dropping them off at this daycare thinking that it's a respected, certified place, and you have a foreign fugitive hiding out there in plain sight. So we're giving people the opportunity.
Yes, to self-deport?
Yeah, to self-deport.
Tell me about that.
That's an opportunity where the U.S. government, will pay for you to go back to your country. You'll have the opportunity to go back. You'll have the opportunity to come back. Have the opportunity to come back where you could be barred if you stay here. You won't be in custody. You can go back on your own. I think, Secretary Noem is great for leading the charge on that. It was one of her initiatives to give that, that person that's here illegally a humane and a respectful way to go back to their country. And I think a lot of people should take advantage of that because you're having the opportunity to not only go back to the country, not be in detention, U.S. government will pay for that, but you'll have the opportunity to return the right way and take the advantage of coming into the United States the correct way with the right visa, have the ability to work, and really experience the American dream.
Have you seen any data from the app yet? How many people are actually signing up for that?
We are seeing a lot of data from people go into the app and taking time to register on it. The data is still raw as far as how many are self-deporting on their own right now. But I definitely think as it gets out there and there are more people see the opportunities that you won't be in jail, you won't have to be away from your family, you could go back on your own, not have to worry about affording a flight or crossing the border or dealing with the cartels as you cross back through Mexico. Having that opportunity to go back in a safe, dignified way, I think more people are going to take advantage of that.
Do people have to worry about ICE agents going into schools and hospitals and churches?
No, not at all. An ICE agent or an ICE officer isn't going to go into a school to raid it, isn't going to go into a church or house of worship and pull someone out. Unless that's a public safety threat or a national security threat that's hiding in there, we actually know. We're not going to do that. It's a falsehood that's out there. It's a false narrative that's totally wrong. Under this administration, the previous policy about not making arrests at churches, schools, sensitive location, that was rescinded under this administration. Past administration, we were barred from it. We couldn't make arrests even in front of the location. But that's an officer safety issue. If there's a criminal actually in a hospital that's hiding, we'll go in there and arrest that person, right? Under the previous administration, we couldn't even do that without it going through 7 layers of the chain of command, going all the way up to the department. The narrative that ICE is going around to schools, to business, to churches is just totally wrong. There was an incident in Chicago where the principal of school said ICE came, scared the children, they wanted to do an investigation, they blocked the ICE agents. It ended up being two Secret Service agents that were investigating a terroristic claim on an online issue.
Did the media put it out as ICE?
They put it out as ICE. Went everywhere, ICE is raiding schools. We do, under President Trump's administration, we are really focused on the unaccompanied children that are unaccounted for right now. More than 300,000 children came in under the last administration that we don't have any whereabouts. Trying to track down those sponsors. HSI Los Angeles went to a school just to verify the kids were in school, and that became a media nightmare where HSI agents are going to locate and try to rescue any type of children that are being exploited. Yet the school wouldn't give them information if these children even existed, if they went to school, if they were well cared for. So who's that really protecting, right? That's not protecting those kids that we're looking for. That's just a political agenda that's, hindering public safety. So, ICE agents aren't going into schools. They're not going into hospitals. They're not going into churches. That is just fear-mongering because people don't like what the ICE mission is.
Is there a family separation policy that's changed since the Biden administration?
No. Right now, we couldn't arrest a family. You could be detained. We want to keep the family together. But there is no reason we can't remove a family together. If you're here illegally and you've been lawfully ordered, removed or deported from the United States by an immigration judge under the Department of Justice, we will go ahead and remove that family. That's why we hope people would take advantage of the CBP Home app and go on their own. Go back to, your country of origin and then have the opportunity to come back legally in the United States.
And with someone like the arrest of Romesa Austster, the Tufts PhD student detained in Somerville, is that information that's coming to you from another agency that you're told to affect this arrest, or is that ICE intelligence? Who discerns that and who decides that?
So with that case, that is intelligence that's gained from other agencies, but the State Department is the issuing body that does revoke those student visas. ICE enforces the student visa program, so we do take action on that. Department of State is the one that revokes those visas. But with those type of cases, there is a lot of intelligence that gathered that I really can't get into on the classified side. But there are a lot more to those cases than people see. Unfortunately, again, it's taken out of context. When we're not allowed to speak about a case because of ongoing litigation or any type of classified law enforcement information, a different narrative is spun, and then that takes off, which again just goes back on ICE being rogue, ICE being dangerous, which really, that isn't the case.
And detention. Do you decide where someone will be detained, if they'll be sent to Louisiana or if they'll go to Rhode Island? How is that determination made?
So, like for instance, in New England, we don't have a dedicated ICE facility. We rely on partnerships with local agencies or local jails where we pretty much rent bed space from. In Massachusetts, we don't have any female bed space. We don't have any family unit bed space. If someone's arrested today, they could go to Pennsylvania, they could go to Louisiana, they could go to Texas. It's all based on our current bed space. There's just not enough ICE bed space throughout the United States to accommodate all the criminal aliens that we do have. So for like Boston and New England, it's a common practice that we do have to move those individuals out of state many times. We make the notifications, but we just don't have the bed space and the capability to take care of that individual here in the Commonwealth. So we do have to move them out from time to time.
What gets you up and gets you going every morning? What makes you think that, okay, I want another day at this?
You know, I think the thing that gets me going every day is being able to represent the men and women of ICE. I'm able to tell their stories. I'm able to take the punches for them so they can go out there and do the work they want to do. To me, that's what excites me about the job. Never mind the headaches or the gray hair or all the stress. I do it because the men and women of ICE signed up to do a law enforcement mission, and they're doing amazing work in the communities all around the United States and globally to ensure that American citizens are safe here, at home and abroad. And to me, to have the opportunity to represent them and represent the United States at this level, it's an honor, but that's what really motivates me, is making sure that I can be the voice of the men and women of ICE and ensure that they have the resources they need to do the job they signed up for.